Well, hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of I was gonna say Trash Days. Oh God, Unfiltered Pineapple Podcast, and I'm joined with my hosts or co-host, as I should say, Dean and Orik,
What's
and
up?
I am Ari. Say hi,
Hey,
guys.
how's it going, everybody?
Long time no here.
Yeah, and today we're gonna be talking about different topics regarding university life and unpopular opinions.
Or for those of
So,
you, yeah, you know what? Never mind. I thought you said college life for a second, and that's a totally different term in other countries for international people. College is seen as middle school in like Europe and Africa, so they're like, "Why are you talking about middle school?" Um, but anyways, yeah, university. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Secondary education.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, well, wouldn't it be like tertiary education? Anyways,
Depends on where
um, so,
it can be.
so I'm with the opinion that college for 4 years is unnecessary, and if you are in college, God bless you. And we'll talk about how to survive college and all the stuff that you really need to know. But in general, like I'm of the opinion that you should not need 4 years of education. I've personally been through 4 years of education, and I'm currently in 3 more years of postgraduate education. And so my opinion is that 4 years of university is completely unnecessary, and the university does not teach you life skills. It does not teach you how to be an expert in the job field that you're going into, and unfortunately it is a scheme for you to rack up hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and yeah, be a slave. So what do you boys
I
opine?
Are
I'm
we
gonna
attaching a
interject for.
caveat to that? Oric, I'll let you speak in a second, but is that in general you're saying it's not applicable, or what about like specialty
It
careers in
really
terms of like
depends on like where.
engineering and like setting yourself up to become a doctor or
Right,
a
right, right,
lawyer?
right,
So
right, right.
actual like
So
skilled.
there's a lot of fields that college does not prepare you well to practice in. If you're going into the humanities, yeah, it's not going to help you. But if you're going into something like engineering or medical school, it's definitely of the opposite spectrum where
It
they
is
do
needed.
help you to become experts in the area of practice, but in general, a lot of students do not go into university to become an engineer or a doctor. So I feel as though that college for 4 years, I personally haven't learned much in college um, to prepare me to where I am now. And it does not give you the necessary job skills to succeed.
Okay, so pretty much the STEM fields you are okay with people going to college and getting more experience with professors and whatnot for. In addition to obviously,
There is a real need for people going into the STEM fields, mostly because they are very high paying jobs. They are very intensive in terms of the necessary skills necessary to be
necessary.
successful in those fields.
Adding a T.
Right.
Yeah, clearly you didn't go to college. You added a T in there. I'll be a grammar Nazi. Anyways, yeah, I can see that line of thinking. I've heard that topic brought up plenty of times before. If you're not in STEM, it's really not necessary. Oric, what did you want to say before I kind of wanted to clarify that?
You guys are fine. What I was just gonna point out was Ari's opening statement touched on a lot of different elements to try and break down in one
Yeah, here's
sentence.
a broad statement, and then let's not narrow it. Let's just don't do college, kids. It's like weed. Stay away.
That's what you find at college. No, so if I were to start with any particular element you brought up, you did start with the right one, talking about the difference between STEM coursework and other coursework in other fields. If you go to college to be a music major, you can get a lot more value out of in life practice and in person mentorship at various locations, unless you're going to get a music major for, a historical element to it or some other non playable element. And it's not to say you can't get a good experience at college for a music degree. I'm not trying to attack anyone for that, and I'm also not a music major, so I don't know exactly everything that comes with that degree and field.
Everyone should follow their passion. Plus, there's a lot of engineering jobs in the music industry. You don't have to just be the lead vocalist.
Yeah, if you're going to be, and I'm just using this as a hypothetical, if you're going there to become the greatest tuba player, and you're like, oh, let me go to college and get a degree that shows I played tuba at my college for 4 years, it's something to add to your resume, but that doesn't enhance your skill set in and of itself. And that's where I kind of want the conversation to go a little bit is what you can get from college rather than just saying that it's all a scam. Because I do agree that the way college currently is, the way university currently is a scam,
It's set up as
noted
a
as such.
corporation. It's not as a public service or anything.
Yeah,
It's or
colleges and without getting into this too early in the conversation, but colleges and universities historically were set up to build skill sets in people to be leaders and the leaders of knowledge and research,
yeah, to improve
political
the
or anything.
American people after World War II. They're like, yeah, we need to.
I'm talking the ancient origins all the way back.
You're talking
It
really
was,
far, but I'm talking about the more
yeah,
recent ones where they actually started pushing towards a more everyone should be doing college more
yeah, you're going
as a
back to the
standard.
1950s. Yeah,
Yeah,
the 1950s, America opened
when it
up
was
the
being pushed
college
as a
program
mainstream necessity.
because at the time it offered that value. At that time, not many people went to college, and historically speaking, if you were able to get in there, it looked a lot better on your resume. But what happened is you've had multiple generations of people since then, your parents' generation and their parents' generation, they all were told if you want a good job, you got to go to college. And there hasn't been much of a push to remind people that that was important in the 1950s because of the whole society and culture and history and what was going on.
Limited
It's
access to
different in,
information in general. The internet came around.
exactly. Once the internet came out and once knowledge was much easier to share, whether you're going back to the 80s and 90s and 2000s and current, uh, the the access of knowledge does make college a little redundant. And college should, in my opinion, be a lot more focused on skill set development and, as Ari's mentioned, preparing you for the careers and jobs you're looking to go there for. That's why people, and again, I know I'm touching on a lot of elements here, but that's why people go to community college sometimes and they don't get full degrees. They go to community college for one or two night classes to develop a skill set to enhance them at their current job. That's still a thing people do. And that's why community college gets a lot of flack because people don't go there to community college to be the party school and to do all these different social environment activities. People go to community college for the skill set. So before we get a bit farther into this conversation, I did want to provide a bit more of that historical context to say that, yeah, I do agree with Ari that the way the system's currently set up is a scam because it's based on historical facts that are a lot more irrelevant now than they used to be.
Right. I mean, with the internet, you have so much information available to you,
Exactly.
so much so that you could theoretically learn a lot just through an internet course that's freely available, that's open to the public, that
Yeah,
universities are charging thousands of dollars for.
there's people that teach themselves to code in their free time because they have a passion for it and they don't have a college degree. Then you have these people at the age of 18, 19, 35. They go to college to take 4 years of coding classes. And I'm sure there's a value to it because there is a
There
teamwork
is.
element. There's a lot of value to it. But it goes back to the fact that, yeah, all the knowledge is out there. It's a matter of what best helps someone learn. What form of medium do they learn through?
They
That
can.
is,
Speaking more towards the computer science and coding aspect of it, they can teach themselves correct. A lot of you can do that anywhere, and there's lots of free services as well as paid services to help you learn and get certified and whatnot. Going to college, a big benefit of that is understanding more mainstream principles and coding standards and learning to follow them. So it helps you integrate into a work environment easier. You can learn that from certifications and whatnot, but and everywhere you go, you're gonna have different like coding standards and how to format and structure your code. But the college experience definitely gives you more exposure to the general. Here's how most people are doing things, and why they do it these ways, and what it means. Uh, so I would argue there is a benefit towards it. Plus, helps build connections because not every it's a stereotype, but not every computer science individual is the most outgoing and extroverted individual. Uh, Many of them will like to just stay in their rooms, especially in college, and just code for fun. And they don't really go out and engage with others and build connections, which helps them get those internships and jobs outside of it.
Yeah, you're kind of going down the rabbit hole of STEM though, like we mentioned at the start. You have your STEM courses and your scientifically based courses that are focused on knowledge building and things of that nature. And then you have your other courses where college just and university just really isn't the right course of action. If you're going to be a teacher, of course, different states and jurisdictions have requirements for having obtained a certain amount of college credits and stuff. But that in itself is a victim of this societal pressure to have everyone go to college. Say, hey, if you want to do this job, you need to have these qualifications. There's a lot of people that got grandfathered into a system that did not require college requirements or college course taking requirements that still perform just as well or sometimes better than people that get the college degrees. And that comes
Before in the
from
United States, yeah, before in the United States, you could get a law degree from a 4-year university. And we're talking about just a straight, bachelor's of law course, and you are able to practice law after getting such a degree. Now you require a Juris Doctor in order to practice law in the United States. And that's just movement of just pushing the profession away from like you're pushing the profession away from individuals who can't afford to get into the system. You're pushing away potentially intelligent people who now have to go through 4 years of college in addition to 3 additional years in a postgraduate program in order to practice law in the United States. And that doesn't include, the bar exam or the professional ethics exam as well, which are also required in almost all 50 states.
Okay, so careers like becoming a lawyer and a doctor, they have to keep the standards high because those are very high stress, high I don't want to say action, but there's a lot of burden with those jobs because you have to make sure things are done correctly, properly, legally, morally, etc. So you got to keep the standard high for that.
But what stops a student, from being able to get a bachelor's of law degree to be able to practice law in the U.S.? What's the necessity of going through 4 years of undergraduate education, which, in my personal experience, we have individuals, a wide spectrum of individuals taking different degrees. For example, we have people who come from STEM who decide to want to pursue the law. We have people who are in the humanities, which is like the vast majority of people going into law are from the humanities area. And then we also have different things that are not even related to the law, like art or theater majors who go into the law.
Yeah, like
And
you're to interrupt, sorry, but to interrupt, the law may not be the best example because the law is pervasive to living in a society, so it touches all elements and all careers of where people go and how they live and how they interact. So it has
but
an
the thing
overarching
is that
theme.
the law,
But
uh,
yeah, go no, go
having a
ahead. Sorry.
post-secondary graduation in law means that you have to understand all the core aspects of what the law is in order to be able to practice in a specialty thereafter. So the person who does get a major in art, for example, well, now they go into law school in order to know the basic core elements of what it is to be a lawyer, what it is to think like a lawyer, what it is to practice the law, and on quite frankly, law, in a way, law school doesn't teach you how to practice law either. But that's a whole different topic. But
Uh,
what's the necessity of going through 4 years of university in order to then go for 3 additional years to learn all of the aspects to become a lawyer? If you know that you want to become a lawyer well before then, why
Just
can't you
so
just take a bachelor's of law degree to be able to practice law?
so if I just understand correctly before I make any more comments, you're arguing that 3 years is fine for the law program, but not the 4 years for the undergraduate because it doesn't pertain to the law
My
program.
my argument is that we are
Or
treating the
you,
profession we're so we add a lot of things to university to be able to get a degree. And my argument is that you don't need the unnecessary element of having to go through undergraduate education if you know that you want to practice law. So
I agree.
you could theoretically just go directly into a law school and say I want to become a lawyer and just go through a program that trains you to become a lawyer. I'm saying that you could get a bachelor's level degree in order to be able to practice law without, the education structure changing in a way that is detrimental to the profession because frankly, 3 years might be enough just for to attain the valuable skills to be able to practice law in general. Whereas like the skills that you get, in undergrad aren't necessarily germane in order to help you to achieve that in the profession. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's why I was asking because at first I thought you were saying all 7 years was irrelevant, and then I assumed you were trying to say that just the first 4 years of undergraduate were irrelevant because of the chosen career path.
Yeah, what I'm
So
saying is 4 years of
undergraduate,
education that aren't necessarily relevant to the profession is irrelevant.
but does that still make it a scam though? That's someone who's changed they went from music to law, or maybe their whole intention was to go into law around music. So you're saying in either situation, though, the 4 years would be irrelevant.
In general, if you want to become an attorney, the fact that you studied music before is irrelevant to becoming an attorney. What you're saying is like, okay, well, it can help you if you want to become into the specialty. That may help you, but in general, to become an attorney, you need to know things that
That's
are
not what I'm asking.
relevant to becoming an attorney.
That's
Not
not what I'm asking. So someone says they go to college, they want to be a music major, and then years later, let's say 10 years later, like you know what, I'm going to follow up and actually go into law instead. So would that person who went there with the intention of a music major have gotten the value out of that because their original intent was not law?
okay. The thing with that is, then you're well. It's helpful that because in order to go into law school, you need a undergraduate degree. So with that, that's out of the way. But I'm just saying that the music degree at that instance would then be irrelevant in order to get a law degree thereafter.
Okay, so indirectly you did answer me that the undergraduate requirement's not necessary for a law program. Okay.
Oh,
Regardless,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
An undergraduate degree is irrelevant to a law program, in my opinion.
Okay, that's what I thought you were trying to get at. I just needed it worded the way I I could make sure I understood it. Sorry.
But it goes to like the greater concept that,
The
going into
undergraduate program
university
is a scam
is,
in general. I agree.
yeah. It the undergraduate or the university programs aren't really tailored to help a student to be successful in what they're trying to achieve. If you're going into music or theater, aspiring to be an actor or a performer, the the fact that you go into university to get that music or theater degree isn't going to necessarily help you in order to achieve that dream. It'll help you to understand like the industry a little bit better but I would say that in general, it's not suited to tailor to your success. It's suited to basically squeeze you out of every dollar that you have. And at the end of those 4 years, what skills do you have that are going to be able to help you to achieve what you want to achieve in terms of, your career, advancing your career? A lot of those skills are actually attained, by performing itself, something that you don't need university to do. You
Experience
also need to
based,
know
yeah.
some other soft skills, like, how to sell yourself and how to basically, try to traverse through that industry because there's a lot of, things that could sink you that you wouldn't know coming out of university.
I think it. I think you two are tiptoeing around it a little bit. I'll try and state it more bluntly and direct here. Correct me if I'm wrong. A college structure nowadays is falling more in lines with the general USA education system at large, where it seems where they're being more reactionary to getting, let's say, success rates rather than uh, actually performing their job descriptions properly at large. I'm not saying individual professors, and when I'm speaking like the institutions at large,
Hmm.
to where like especially with post-pandemic stuff, where schools and whatnot are more focused on getting kids to pass rather than making sure they teach stuff. Where you can only give a 50 at a minimal, you can't give students a 0, and things like that. Something we heard recently from a former teacher. Um,
Oh
I
my God, that's another thing to think
I
about too, because,
so it sounds
and
like
I'll give you an example, like in law school, we are in a curved environment, and so no one can theoretically fail.
I don't want a
Um,
lawyer like that.
right,
I don't want a doctor that technically isn't allowed to fail.
right. And you
The
don't
surgery's
really
going to
know
work no matter
also,
what.
Your surgery will be a
right.
success. We won't describe what success means, but it will be a success. The doctor will get out of the surgery room. The surgeon will get out of the surgery room just fine and alive.
On that same tangent, that also means that no matter what, in a court case, doesn't matter. That lawyer wins, so you have to pay them.
Sorry, didn't mean
they
to
they don't
interrupt you,
know they
Ari.
don't know failure.
What were you saying
What
about
I
the
was going
curved
to add to
system?
that
Yeah.
is, with the curved environment, you're set up to compete against other students, not necessarily to compete in terms of, have I learned the skills properly and enough to be successful as an attorney?
Not with
And so
yourself and the
you're
profession
you're comparing
itself, but
yourself,
rather with
like
the
you
others in your room specifically.
exactly, and you're basically like, it could be a fact of like everyone is crappy in terms of learning, what the professor's trying to learn, but you would never know that because everyone is still adjusted to whatever grade that they get. So even though like some person could attain like 50% of just the material in general and still get an A plus, and then the rest, fall in line with how they attained, their score, I guess.
Does do the class grades really matter at the end if they don't pass the bar exam? Like, just because they pass the class, which moves them up to other classes, which gives the institution more money and the programs more money because they stay enrolled longer. Does it really matter that much if ultimately they don't pass the bar exam? I mean, obviously to the individual who wasted money and whatnot because they've been in the program for longer than they should have been.
Are you
Does that make
asking
sense?
if the university, like if the law school um has like a curved structure in terms of grading, does that really affect them if a person like fails the bar exam? Is that what you're trying to ask, or
Sort of along those lines. Does it seem malicious is not the right word? Maybe predatory. Does it seem unjust. I don't know, where they implemented the curved system to where they technically won't fail the classes or anything like that, or they will get through
Mm,
the program, but ultimately if they don't pass the bar exam, oh, that's up to you because you passed our program. And like I said, it would keep them enrolled in the program for longer, which means more time and more money and more statistics and marketing and advertising for the
right.
institution itself to be like, look how many people we have, look how many people make it through to the bar exam,
Mhm.
and then we have this much success rate. Um, if
In
that is
terms
the
of
intention of it, that
yeah.
that can be seen a bit predatory in terms of practice and whatnot. But I'm not saying anyone and everyone can get into the program to begin with. I know there's an initial like testing criteria you have to meet just to enroll. But if a student should have dropped out sooner because they're not passing well enough, they're not learning and actually retaining the information quickly enough, or just sufficiently enough. They're just being like tethered in to stay in longer, struggling more, suffering more, never
Mhm.
really fixing or catching up. Do
That's a
you
really
really
good
think
question. Yeah.
the curved grading system is like that for that reason? Do you think it makes a difference ultimately? Because again, if you don't pass the bar exam, it doesn't really matter. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong there, but
Mhm.
so that would come down to
Right.
another form
I
of
think
practice of
the
the institution and how it's just how it exists nowadays, as opposed to what it should probably ideally be. Where hey, you're getting constant zeros, or you're constantly last in the class, and it kind of depends. I can kind of see a reason
yeah.
for curved structure, but maybe not for a specialty like that. Sorry, what were you saying?
So, just to give you like a nuanced response, I will say in general that grading is irrelevant. Um, a lot of the rankings that the law school uses is mostly, how they handle admissions, who they're trying to get. The admissions test itself, is like more of a metric in how successful the law school is than it is for what, grades the students get. Um, I think one aspect of how law schools measure success is what percentage of their graduates get a job like right after graduation. And that doesn't really tell you the whole story because success after graduation doesn't necessarily entail like, the student passing the bar exam for example. Because it could be a thing where a student decides, well, I'm not going to take the bar exam until like a year after I graduate. And so um, I think the metric itself is irrelevant in terms of, I don't think a lot of law schools grade themselves based on how many pass the bar exam, but rather how often someone's employed. And the problem with that is
Accreditation, yeah.
they could the fact that let's say that 95% of all graduates have a job after they graduate. Well, what jobs are those? Yeah, you'll have positions that are actual like full level attorneys, at law firms, but what percentage of that is like from the 95% that graduated? You have people that are working for private companies, not in a lawyer position, but rather as a consultant that is not practicing law, which you don't need a bar exam in order to do. And then also how many people are underemployed when they graduate. A lot of that isn't captured by, the 95% of, oh, well, they have a job after graduation. So I would say that that's a really good marker for success. Well, how much of those who graduated are now in like serious debt? How much of them are actually, well employed after graduation? How much of them are underemployed? You don't really catch all of that in that metric. And I would say that the rankings in general for law schools is somewhat irrelevant to what it really means for a law school to be successful too, because a lot of the metrics include how many desks are available for students, how many books are in the library, which, I mean, in modern practice, I haven't once touched a book for a an assignment so far. Everything is available online. Everything is available through like the databases available for law students. Like, I don't need to touch a book in order to do proper legal research. And for them to still be using that metric is, I don't know, is abhorrent. It's not with the times. It doesn't measure true success.
Okay. But that's just like an outdated metric, an outdated system for measuring that stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean it is it can't be updated for a different way to measure that kind of success
And the whole
rate, I
conversation
guess.
now amongst like the profession is that attorneys don't really need the bar exam in order to show how competent they are in order to practice,
Why?
which I have mixed feelings about that. I don't want to go into it, but that's the greater conversation now within the profession is that you've gone through 3 years of law school. You should be able to know enough to practice law, which I mean, personally, I don't have a real strong opinion on the bar exam itself, but that's the greater conversation amongst attorneys now.
I disagree with that. You know how many students go through high school and still can't like spell their name ever successfully all the time?
Right, and that's where like
Just
the
because someone can get through the
curved
class doesn't mean
environment
they
comes
paid
back in,
attention.
you
Yeah.
know? That's where the curved environment comes back in, you know, it's like, well, you have students that are like a student could get absolutely nothing in a exam right. And this is like talking about law school exams, like so in civil procedure or torts or whatever, you can have a student that really just goes in there, signs their name on the exam, and they have an assured grade. They can't get lower than, I don't know, a D or something. And that would be, I guess, academically sufficient for them to pass. Um, but it
Like
also
the
depends on the
SAT.
law school. But yeah, so
Again, that kind of
you
falls.
can have someone has no knowledge. But again, like I have mixed feelings about the bar exam. I know that here or where in Virginia, they have some really stringent like requirements in terms of like, you know, what you need to do in order to test for the exam and everything. And it's probably one of the hardest ones in the country.
Good,
But
good.
whether or not it should be that hard, I don't know.
The harder,
Or
the
whether there
better.
should be
The
a
harder,
exam or
the
not.
better. Make a tattoo out of that. Um,
But going back
I
to the
feel
broader
like
concept of universities being, you know, something required in general, I think is kind of misguided. I think our economy today needs a lot
It's
more
more
people in the
outdated than
trades.
misguided.
It's outdated. It is misguided because people are still pushing that agenda of pushing more and more students through the university um, framework, and it I think it ignores a key like part of our economy where we do need more people in the trades. We have a huge like need for laborers, tradespeople that I think will only make it more difficult to find people to do that type of work. And also the fact that as there's a scarcity for like a need, the price of it will often go up. And so I feel like we need more plumbers and more electricians, and universities are not, you know, the place where people would learn how to do those trades.
Um, why do you think? I know this is just an opinion. I'm not expecting you to give a perfectly statistically accurate
Mhm.
answer. Why do you think the trades are less pursued and desirable in mainstream society these days? Do you think it falls under a common pretense of the media portrays it as a bad and
Mhm.
uh, thankless or stupid job or the comedy jobs in a lot of sitcoms, or do you think it falls under other things just because of the push for STEM and college degrees, and you don't go to college to get a trade? You're like, well, I need to go to college just in general. What are your thoughts for why that is? One thing I will make note of is I heard this statistic a little while ago. I don't know how accurate it is. I got to read the study itself, but They said that there's more millionaire plumbers than there are salaried millionaires. So desk jobs millionaires. So people just don't know that. But
Right. I think
why do you think trades aren't as uh, not persevered pursued as like the
pursuit, yeah.
college route? Because obviously it's two different career paths. You don't go to college to go to a trade. Like, yeah, you can at any point go get your trade, but you know, when people get out of high school or drop out early, they don't go, oh, I'll get my 4-year degree and then I'll go to trade, or I'll get my trade, and sometimes they'll go to college for a different career path entirely. But it's kind of a one or the other option normally. Why do you think that is?
I think that society has portrayed people who do trades as unintelligent. I think it's a thing where people think that, oh, you go into a trade that you're not intelligent or you're being lazy, or I think a lot of it is misguided. Um, and it's just something that people have always wanted, they want their children to be successful. Parents want their kids to go to college,
Yep.
and that's like that used to be like a marker of success, is that you go to college, then you get a really good paying job, and then you start a family and
Like,
happily ever after. But
yeah.
I think the reality today is that far a large number of people have been entertained by that storyline, that idea that you can go to college and then you're able to get a good paying job. I don't think that's the reality of today's economy. And because of that, we have a shortage of laborers, we have a shortages of people in the trades. And now it seems that, people are realizing, well, perhaps the trades, people are always going to need a plumber, people are always going to need an electrician, whereas people aren't going to always need someone who can type on the computer, because a lot of those jobs have now become automated. And so it's just a thing about like the economy that's changing, and the fact that, there is still that need for physical labor, for skilled labor, that people don't realize and they don't appreciate a bit. That being a plumber is a real skill set. No one person can do it well, and that it takes time to cultivate a skill in order to be able to be successful. And I don't know much about your what you said about there being more millionaire plumbers than actual like white collar professionals, but I would feel that that's true, because if someone were to take up the skill of being a good plumber, then they can hire like a team with them, and then from that, I just see someone being entrepreneurial and starting like a business, and then being able to attain such wealth. Whereas if you're working for a company 9 to 5, you're not necessarily cultivating a skill set that is indistinguishable from other people. You've actually become a little bit more, how would I say, disposable, that your skills aren't necessarily in scarcity, whereas anyone can replace you the next day. If you were to show up, if you were not to show up to work, they can have someone at your desk by noon or whatever. Whereas like a plumber, there's no one right now that I could say like, okay, I need a plumber right now. And I would have to like go through the steps of, trying to find someone that I could trust. And they often charge like, really high rates, because there is a scarcity, and because having that skill is rare nowadays. I think that like tries to answer your question a bit.
Yeah, a bit. Um, yeah, society does not need to be shunning, shaming, uh, discouraging the pursuit of trades. I actively encourage them, especially to high schoolers, even though I took the 4-year college path. But
Hmm.
I'm in a STEM field. So that's different. I'm an engineer. I benefited from the education and the connections.
I would really say to if there's anyone like in high school right now, I would say to study your options really well because if you want to become an actor, for example, well, there's not really many opportunities for that, and so maybe you shouldn't go to college for that per se, but rather, you should probably make a plan, a life plan. It's like if I want to live, I don't know, somewhere like California where there's like a huge like industry in acting, you know, how am I going to be able to afford that? And if I'm in debt, how would I ever be able to afford that?
Well,
And
you
so to really think about it, make a life plan, and know that like if you go into like a trade, then you aren't going into debt and that you're learning a valuable skill and that skill is transferable anywhere
Yeah, that
and
skill will
you
always be
can
useful
you can
until like
amass
some
you can
major
still amass a wealth, not being a white collar worker.
Yeah. And
I
again, going
would
into like acting, you don't have to just be the lead role. There's plenty of supporting jobs that are equally high demanding and or skillful to support productions and whatnot. And college could be beneficial for that, especially if you go into like
Mhm.
music theory or something. So I'm not shutting it down entirely. Because you can learn a lot about softwares and systems and standards and history of it and why things have changed the way they are that you probably wouldn't get on an on-site experience where they would just say make sure you push these buttons correctly and do that for the next 6 years without issue. Um, I'm not a, maybe I'm a bit old school. I'm not entirely against the concept of colleges are bad or you don't need college. I think I'm more along the nuance of the way they are operating now is bad because the intention of the programs and institutions is not aligned with the mission objectives, if that makes sense.
Or the realities of a modern economy, really.
Correct. Like I said, mentioned earlier, they're operating like a corporation. The highest paying
Hmm.
jobs on any institution is the marketing department. It's the enrollment department. People getting more students to come on site, which is why every campus is constantly
sports.
increasing their student body. It's those people.
Yeah, or sports. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Sports
about
is where they make most of their money. It's about
merchandise.
the
Yep, it's not about the programs, but
intellectual property.
that came when, God,
Branding.
I'm trying to do active research on this stuff now to actually pull out sources and link them and whatnot. But
This happened a couple decades ago when the states started moving away from funding secondary education.
and the federal
Uh,
government was
they
covering the
they
cost. Yeah.
slowly, yeah, the government used to cover the cost. There was a lot stricter requirements to make sure that they didn't raise rates and things of that nature too much. And then slowly they took away so that they could put the budget elsewhere. They would, and again, it's different for each state and jurisdiction, but generally what they did was they took the money from dedicated towards secondary education and put it to other elements of the state budget and said, hey, you guys are able to cover the cost on your own, just raise it up slowly. Here's the legal limit. So rather than saying, oh, well, we're told 3% max, so let's do 1%, they're like, you know what, let's do 3% or 3.5%, and we'll just appeal. And that's how they would raise tuition slowly over time. So it came down from primarily, and again, each state's different, but a lot of it came down to budgetary concerns for the state as a whole, and not necessarily the fact that they didn't want to invest in secondary education.
Yeah. So capitalism. I think the your initial argument, Ari, I'm not against it. I do believe it is accurate in the current reality of things. But I'm gonna be a bit more, I guess, on the optimistic or idealistic approach of it and disagree and say, I think college is fine. I think anyone. I think there's multiple factors to this. In part, of both the capitalistic, predatory nature of colleges and universities currently, but also a mix of society and the focus on it and the how the institutions and the education system at large, at least in the USA, bit, modifies itself more to encourage, I guess, just students being there and passing and improving their numbers, which comes down to budgeting and getting funding, et cetera, et cetera. It always comes down to money. rather than, hey, 40% of the people didn't pass because they just didn't meet the criteria to show they had an accurate understanding of the class material, the knowledge that was needed to move on. I've had plenty of computer science prodigies that were much better than me. Without a doubt, they slept in code. They slept in binary. They failed classes because they chose not to do the work because they're like, I don't want to do it, and they're good. But if you don't put in the work, then how are they going to do it at an actual job if they're told, hey, we need this project done, and they're like, I didn't want to do it. Oh, they're getting paid for that. I mean, you're spending your own money right now to pay for this class, and you're choosing not to do it. How does that show you're going to value someone else's money and time if they're putting it into you? So
Uh, that's that's a very narrow
it is a very
approach
specific
because
situation, but everything is
yeah,
nuanced here. But I'm saying in large, I'm not opposed to the 4-year education system. Definitely not with STEM, history, philosophy. If you want to become a teacher, obviously it's needed. Not everyone wants to be a teacher. Not everyone can be a teacher. We need more teachers, more benefits for them, etc. We need to make it a more desirable and equally compensated job for the amount of work they put in and that people expect of them. But to get just a 4-year
not
philosophy
have a plan.
degree and never use it just because it was how you could graduate college, and you're like, I'll go back to McDonald's afterwards. Yeah, you don't need it, but that comes down to a society issue of they're told to go, they're told to go. It's the same reason why they're told to go to middle school and high school, because they're told to do it. They don't really think for themselves why they're doing it. And that's why you have a lot of kids that just don't care about the classroom. They do it because they're like, I have to do it or else mom's going to get mad at me for getting an F. But they're not actually doing it for improving themselves and their understanding. There's plenty of individuals, like, I'll be a little bit egotistical here, like me and most of my friend group, where we actively challenged ourselves in school. I'm not saying everyone got a perfect grade or anything, but uh, for the most part, most of the individuals in our friend group actively tried to learn and develop some sort of skill or whatever they could with a class material, especially in college when they were paying for the classes. They're like, how can I get the most out of this? They weren't just going to college because they had to. If they dropped out, they dropped out because either financial reasons or they're like, I'm not getting what I expected to get out of the class material, so they left. And that's their own decision. They weren't just blindly following it. They went and got other jobs that actively improved the skill sets they were looking for, something like that. I think colleges and universities are fine as is, but I think it's more of a societal issue as well as capitalism. It's always capitalism. It's always the green giant.
I'm going to offer a bit more historical context here too, and I get the idea that that's been my whole role this whole conversation. So I'll give in my 2 cents later. But you have to remember that there's also been a transition to what the value of a college degree is, and then there's also been a transition to what to expect from college. With, as you mentioned earlier, the marketing, the sports, and all that stuff. A lot of college has been focused on the social experience now,
Yep.
rather than what you get from college or
We
what they're
have a
going to
lazy
college
river
to
on
do.
campus. Congratulations. You guys can just hang out in the lazy river in between classes for hours on your day. But they don't
Or
Yeah,
have
there's
increase
a
the
nap
pay for their
pods.
professors. They don't increase pay for the
yeah.
professors for 4 years, but they installed a lazy river that costs tons of money every day to keep running and operating for no reason.
So there is a value to the social environment of college. I mean, again, going back way back in time, the historical context is these are people of like-minded interests who are all being, whether by choice or not, they're all there to develop the same kind of skill set, leadership skills, knowledge base, things of that nature. So the networking comes naturally with the interest and with the pursued goals that everyone shares. The transition that's been over the last couple decades, again with the change in budgets and all the other stuff we aforementioned, uh, the focus has been a lot more on the college experience and not the value you get from the education. And that's where it all goes down to is, oh, you got to go get that 4-year degree. You got to have the college experience. It'll get you ready. It'll get you networked. It'll get you the degree that says you're good to go. And people, whether they want to admit it or not, yeah, it is a society thing where they don't actually just say, "Is this the right choice?" We have a friend in our friend who his parents, I don't think they had a conversation. His parents looked and said, "We're not sending you to 4 years. You can go to community college first. 4 years is not for you." And you know what? Sometimes it needs to just be that blunt, where whether the person likes it or not, that's the reality they're in, financial or competency wise, whatever it is. Um, but as we mentioned at the start, a lot of the current material taught is stuff that's available as publicly sourced knowledge on the internet. So the value in the education is either the mentorship element, the networking element, or just how the material is presented and taught in a, for lack of a better word, a discussion forum. And tying back into the society element, or not society, the social element, you can find almost any person who's been in college, 95% chance. I'm not doing any statistics here, but I just feel 95% chance they don't hang out or talk to their old college friends much anymore. You hear it on the news all the time. Someone's like, oh, I lost touch with them. They moved away. Things like that. As people get older, they move away from their older friend groups, high school, college, and stuff, and they make their friends with where they're living and their kids' friends and parents. Uh, so if I have a bit of trouble understanding what social experience you actually develop, what social skills you develop in college that you wouldn't be able to develop otherwise. Um, and this kind of goes back to me considering the 4 year undergrad program, just a general program with no goal, as a scam because if you're going there for people pick schools based on the sports team, they pick schools based on the party school element of it. That's
Where your
you're,
friends go.
yeah, your friends go too, or your girlfriend goes, or whoever it is. Your family went there. Well, family, I'm not going to touch on that because sometimes your family could get a good value out of it, and that's why you want to go there yourself. But nevertheless, yeah, the social element is supposed to be secondary to what college stands for in society, and this goes back to the corporate element of it. They've changed college from here's a degree, here's what skills you've developed to hey, like you mentioned, we got a lazy river. You could go
Hmm.
to a theme park and do that with a year's pass, but you could also just do it in between classes here. It's all about promoting a fun environment rather than hey, we want you to develop yourself and lead yourself and others through your career, through your life. Here's how you can do that. You pick the field you want to go into, we'll help give you the skill set and the information to build your skill set, but it's on you to do it.
It's like yeah, kind of like how everyone's just kind of expected to get a high school degree, and now everyone's expected to get a college degree. So we'll just make it as appealing as possible because colleges actually benefit financially from it. So do high schools and whatnot with budget funding from the government and whatnot. But colleges more specifically can have higher profit margins from just getting more students interested in them. Because you're gonna get your degree anywhere. Why not do it here? Um, yeah. So it's not aligned with the traditional mission objectives.
No, again, back in the 50s, it was set up as hey, we just finished World War II. Let's get all these G.I. Joes into college and get some degrees because we have a lot of new
We
technology
need
and a
to
lot of new
improve our
fields opening up.
society skill base so much. Let's get them in there. Whoever wants to, we'll pay for. Yeah, we gotta start pumping out more things so we can stay ahead. Yeah.
And that's the mission statement still. It hasn't been updated, even though society has changed a lot. Um, and this did tie back into what you two were talking about earlier. But if yeah, there's a needs based element to a lot of this. In the 50s, we needed more STEM people. We needed more of these certain programs. That's why they were funded and paid for specifically by the government, saying, yes, we want you to pursue this. That's not, I mean, yeah, they still fund STEM programs and veterans and stuff now, but it's not as much of a directive because it's not needs based. They want more people to go into the med programs because of the aging generations, and they want more people to go into reactor. They encourage people to go into fields where they're being reactive and not proactive. And that's also a society issue where we've over time, generation after generation, people haven't thought about it because it was just expected or just inferred that that's the best choice. And now there's a big milestone where people are saying, I didn't get anything from this. I still won't get anything from this. I'm trapped. Why would I have my kids do this? Why would I have the next generation go through the same problem? So we're at that point where society is changing their opinion of the value of the degree. And I think that's also, I agree with you, Ari, that that's where trade schools and community colleges and all these other smaller specialty programs and schools and degrees come into play, where they say, look, you don't need 4 years. You come here, you have the interest and the passion, it's much cheaper, and you got people who help you because they also have a passion. Um, that's why I agreed at the start that current undergraduate program, if you're just going to college, go to college, you're being scammed. If you go there with specific intent, law degree, medical, things of that nature, and
If you have a
you can
plan.
make that, yeah, if you can make that plan, not necessarily a life plan, but you have a plan saying, I'm going to college and here's why. Or you're in college and you pick your major and you go, this is why, this is the job I'm working towards. You can start working towards that skill set you want to develop. College isn't going to force you to develop skills. The point at college is they give you the resources to build your skill set yourself. You can't use your skills if you don't understand what your skills are. That's you don't just automatically know how to be an electrician. You don't automatically know how to uh, demonstrate certain qualities that come from experience if you don't have the resources available to build that experience. It's kind of like training blocks. Someone else can speak. I need to get some water.
Um, yeah. Uh, I think we're on consensus about that. The way things are, yeah, if you don't have a plan, you don't need to go to college. It's a waste of time and money. If you have a plan
And you
like
can always
I
go in
did,
the future. You can
you
be
can
in your
always
30s and
go.
just go.
You can always go back. People nowadays, especially, I don't want to be targeting or offensive, but there's a lot of parents out there with the misconception of, well, my kids need to go to college because they need to have that partying experience and they need to make friends. And kind of like you said, Orik, most people don't talk with their friends after college or high school and whatnot. Our group is definitely
Jesus
an
Christ,
exception.
people are actually thinking that. Good lord.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
For
it's a
our
very
younger
common thought. I've
siblings,
talked to coworkers like that.
we've had our our parents have been in meetings where the other parents are like, "Oh, why aren't your kids going to so and so? Why are they considering community college? You're not going to get that partying experience and make friends and whatnot." And our parents are like, "They're not supposed to go to college for
Partying, yeah.
partying. They're there to get an education. They're there to do that stuff. They're there to get a good job, get in and get out quickly. It's not about getting drunk and potentially causing problems and not learning anything and paying a bunch of money for them just to drop out. You're there for an education. The fact that you can party is a more modern system of, again, capitalism allowing kids to stay on campus and have fun and enjoy the experience instead of learning about themselves. But you can have that experience outside of a college campus. You can go to
Right.
parties and whatnot. You don't need to pay thousands of dollars
Thousands
just
of
for that.
dollars to hide your beer because someone says you can't have it near you. When you could go to a friend's house near your own home for less money and have it.
And their parents will probably be cool with it too if you know them. If you're at their house, like it's whatever. Um, so yeah, I think the real issue, you kind of touched on it, Ari. You can disagree or you can say I'm wrong. I'm fine with being wrong. I like being wrong.
You're wrong.
That's fine. I'll shut up.
I don't
Oh,
know.
say it again. Say it again.
But say it again just to make sure I know what I'm disagreeing with. It comes down to mix
Oh, I don't know, but you're
of
just wrong in general. Just kidding.
that is accurate though. The fact that you guys haven't disagreed that much has been reassuring to me. The society's perception of college has also changed a lot because of those changes in mission objectives, which allows more people to go in without a direction. They're supposed to pick a direction without much thought of, I'll just go get a philosophy degree. I'll go get a sociology degree or whatever is easiest because I can't do the STEM ones and I didn't really want to do it, but my parents told me to do it and I tried for a semester, quote unquote, but I was too drunk and never went to any of my classes. So I'm going to drop out of STEM and get an easier degree. I'm
Yikes.
not saying they're easier degrees, but from my experience and a lot of my friends' experience and coworkers' experiences, you don't have people dropping out of like sociology or business or communications to go into a double major of physics and math or computer science. They don't drop out of those degrees to go into a STEM field. So that's kind of the stereotype that exists, that the people that just aren't passionate and not going with a purpose just kind of default to some of the easier quote-unquote degrees. There are plenty of people that can make a lot of value out of those degrees. I'm not denouncing or shaming any of those fields. I have several good friends and their partners that got degrees in those fields, and they're performing therapy work and whatnot, or constructive sociology programs, stuff like that. They actually have a passion for it, but in short, it is a lot less intensive than, say, a math degree where you actually have to understand the numbers and make sure things work correctly. There's proof of success, I guess, for those. And so the other ones, which are more abstract and open, allow the window for more of a fallback option. Again, not targeting or shaming anyone in those fields with a passion and an interest to actually get value out of it. But that's just from my experience, what I've seen. That's it. But that comes down again to a society thing where they're like, well, I got to get a degree. It doesn't matter what degree. So they'll get it, and then they'll just go into trucking after that. And they'll get a CDL and just become a trucker. And they spent time getting a communications degree that has no application to something that they're more passionate about, which is just the transportation industry and driving around. Or that's a specific example, but I think you get what I'm saying. I think it more falls under the societal misconceptions of why they need to go to college, which is what you're touching on initially, of you don't need to go to college. It's a bad misconception set up by society and the media of, oh, well, everyone has to do it because everyone needs to go to high school. Everyone needs to go to college. That's just the standard. It is. If you're going into a degree or a field where that's required and you can't get it outside in another type of program or certification, as you're discussing. It doesn't have to be a trade. You could become a sound engineer through practice and internships. You don't need to go to a college for it, but you can if you have no idea where to go, or if you're in an area where that's not really an option and you can't travel across the country for that and hope for the best. Getting a college degree helps open the doors for you to submit your applications to various cities like Savannah, New York, Hollywood, and be like, hey, I would like to get an internship with these jobs. Here's my experience. I can't really afford to move out there just yet, but, I think I qualify. But you have to be passionate about it. You can't just do it just to do it. It comes, I think that's a bigger societal issue of inducing curiosity or passion in people and not just following the wind because that's what they're told to do. A lot of Asian and Middle Eastern and I didn't want to say Philippines, Southeastern countries, the
Southeast Asian,
Indonesian areas. Yeah. A lot of them, the stereotype, they come to the U.S., they're like, you're going to become a lawyer or a doctor. There's one or the other. You don't really get an option. You're going to get good at a specialty so you can support yourself and provide value.
That's true, yeah.
You always have a job. It's not this fallback option. It's and so
do or die.
Yeah, exactly. So they want to do it. They pick one, or if they don't, they pick something else that they want to do. But nonetheless, the students are kind of driven. The kids are more driven because of their parents to be like, they work hard, so I can do this. I'm going to pick something that I can do or I'm wanting to do for years to sustain myself and help them. And they get the most out of their college experience. It's as simple as that. So I think the general populace, it falls onto the general populace and messaging. Media definitely plays a big part in this, and movies and whatnot. um, of just changing the stigma of what it's for. You can't just to do it. You have to make the most out of it. I made the most out of mine. I graduated in 3 years. Simple as that. I didn't spend my whole 4 years. And in hindsight, I didn't need a fourth year. It would have been a waste of time. I could have gotten a double major, but I didn't need it for what I was pursuing. It would just been like, cool, a nice addition to your resume. You're not really ever going to use it. I made the most out of it. I was there for school first. I made a lot of friends. I still talk to a lot of them, actually. Hang out with them regularly enough. Different degrees and everything. Compared to other people I went to university with that haven't even touched or remained in contact with one another after they left other than me. They're like, yeah, I haven't talked to anyone. I just kind of forget to do that. Everyone just gets full with their attention gets full. They get preoccupied with their current situations and
Life.
being independent. Yeah, exactly. Whereas, and a lot of them were like too busy partying, and then they just, after they left, like they didn't talk to their roommates or anything after they left. And they're like, yeah, I'm just kind of hanging around, probably going to move back to near my parents' place to be with them and be around people more. I'm like, it's sad, but there's some people go down that path. Not saying it's wrong, but there's definitely
People,
just a societal issue at large of how people approach college, and it's not them getting the most out of it. I've said
the
numerous times, and that's what I firmly believe.
the pressure is to go to college and have a plan when you get out of college. A lot of people don't have that plan, or if they do have their plan, they can't implement it right away. There's very little prep work anyone does. And this is an education system complaint in general that many people are aware, but there's very little prep work to prepare people to just have a independent life outside of school. Like if you want to be in school, that's fine. Go to school, get the learning and education you want. You're there because you have a passion to. But once you're done with all your schooling and you're living in an apartment or you're back in your parents' basement or you're with a roommate from college for another 2 years or whatever, 10 years later, you're still with roommates and stuff. There's no preparation for people to understand what they want to do with their life. And I'm not
Real
saying
life
you have to
skills.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying you have to go into school and be like, oh, I'm going to be this degree at the age of 5. But just a general understanding of how to balance your work life, your home life, and your social life. That is something you can develop in college. They give you that environment of, all right, you're on campus, your safety's taken care of in some regards, your schedule's taken care of, you know what to expect. It's on you to start to manage an independent lifestyle. For a lot of people, it can be that baby step, but people don't recognize it that way. And
Yeah.
there's no promotion to tell people, hey, you're leaving in 2 years. What's your plan? Hey, you graduate next year. What's your plan? Do you understand how to make rent? Do you understand how to save up to buy a car or a house? What loans are? There's no
Yeah,
so
I don't.
there's a difference. This is a conversation for another day, but college does have value as a stepping stone to get people ready for the real world while
If
still transitioning out of school.
if people use it that way, if they approach it and
Mhm.
utilize the resources in that manner,
And
similar to how I did it. Yeah.
that's what I've been saying from the start is
Yeah.
college isn't about saying here's your degree, here's a demonstration you have these skills. College is primarily designed to say here's the resources to build your skill set and your knowledge base. It's on you to absorb it, to retain it, and to use it.
And to learn those
And
skills and whatnot yourself. Just
yeah,
because
and
you pass
it
the
doesn't
courses
have to
doesn't mean you got the skills. It just means you pass the courses. You need to actually get the value out of the material. Yeah.
exactly. They give you the resources to build your future, but no one ever gives them that messaging. People are like, oh, well, I took this class. So that's why when they apply for internships and jobs right out of the college, a lot of people say, oh, well, I took a class in economics. It's like, all right, cool. You actually understand economic theory, or did you just pass the class? There's no messaging before college or during college as to what you're supposed to get from the college experience. And the lack of an explanation as to what a college experience is supposed to provide you is the scam, in my opinion, because then you don't recognize what value you're looking for unless you actively try and figure it out.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they don't actually have someone they can turn to tell them what they're supposed to get out of it.
Yeah, that's where the societal aspect and the parenting aspect. You can't always blame parents. Parents obviously can't know and retain everything because they got to manage
Especially
themselves
if they've
and
never
kids.
been.
Yeah, but it's definitely, I think, more of a societal issue. And if you don't think you're ready for it, then take the baby steps of community college, or we're looking for trades or certification programs to help get your foot in the door and be like, that's what I want to do. If you don't have a plan when you commit to a college degree of what you plan on doing after you get out, you know, then you shouldn't go. You're just going to waste your time and money. You need to have a plan. And it's not saying it's you need to know exactly what you're doing or have your next 10 years laid out in high school. It's a lot of burden, especially considering most high schoolers are still heavily dependent on their parents for everything, including what's for dinner. Not even how much is dinner that was cooked, is what's for dinner. So it's more, yeah, a societal issue at large that needs to change of what the conception of college needs to be about.
Right. What advice would you give then to someone who doesn't know what to do, what to pursue in college, but the parents like say, okay, you got to go to college.
The same thing I
All
give,
right.
the same thing I advise my younger siblings. What do you have a passion in? Whether you actually end up in that job or not, what are you passionate about right now? And I say this while they're in their last couple of years of high school before they went into college. What do you enjoy? What do you not enjoy? Maybe you don't know what you like. What do you not like? You don't like math? Fuck that. Go to. Do you like animals? You like animals? You might be interested in biology. Something like that. Just really try to narrow down what you are interested in, and that includes what you're not interested in. I'm not interested in music. I'm not going to do anything with music. I like listening to music. I find music theory and the patterns and everything and the subtext of how it impacts the psychology. I find that interesting, but it's just music in general, I'm not interested in. So I was like, not doing anything with that. I don't want to do pure mathematics. I'm not good at that, but I do want to do something involving calculations and predictions, statistics, and so narrow down what you like and don't like. And once you figure out roughly what kind of that falls under, you can decide, can I, maybe you need more time to decide and you're like, I can go to get an associate degree at community college that I can knock out a lot of those general requirements that are needed, and then I can start focusing more on forensic science if maybe I'm interested in that. And then you're like, I don't like it. I actually prefer just marine biology, and so you can go from there and just get your college degree in marine biology the next couple years. Really just narrow down what you do want and don't want, and if you have to take baby steps, take baby steps. Don't feel the full commitment to, and don't feel ashamed if you drop out. Like, plenty of my closest friends were like, I want to be a doctor, and after they got to like organic chemistry or they failed first year chemistry, like, I don't want to be a doctor anymore, and they found something else they're passionate about, whether it's like foreign intelligence, communications, managing, becoming a manager, stuff like that. They're just, it's okay to change your dream, but you need to have a plan, and you need to kind of stick to the plan, and don't feel afraid to swap off if you realize it's not for you. Don't go changing that in year 4. Try to figure that out beforehand. You need to really have some introspection and talk to yourself personally and be like, am I really enjoying this after the 3rd year? Can I do this more intensively for the next 5-6 years? The sooner the better. No, everyone's different, but
Right.
yeah.
And Orik, what advice would you give to someone in that position then?
The
Other than money stuff, also. Oh my god, I'm so into teaching younger people about finances. That's a totally different topic.
Yeah.
the my message kind of repeats, and I tell this to people I currently work with. I tell this to coworkers who have kids that are going to college, and they're like, "Hey, what does your school offer?" And I was like, "Well, this is what they're looking for. This is what they want to get out of it, and that's what the value is going to be." And I tell it to my siblings and other people like that. It is better to go in with a plan, of course. I was one of those where I went through my first year of courses. I didn't have a major assigned to me yet. I uh I got all the prerequisites done for the basic degree, 2 in this field, 2 in that field, 2 in econ, 2 in humanities. I used the first year to kind of dabble in all that stuff and get the basic requirements done so that when I actually picked my major, I could just focus on just my major and minor courses. I didn't have to focus on all these extra factors that weren't as important to me in what I wanted to learn. But the importance of picking something that you can connect with or have a passion with is that you will find yourself trying to learn more, trying to develop your skills more. Again, those people that went into as as you guys were just talking about, people that go into the medical degrees and whatnot, they have a passion or desire to do it, and they want to learn. So they're going to get something out of it, whether it's a skill that they start to develop that they can then transition laterally to a political science, whatever it is, because they have a passion for it, they'll find themselves having more interest in learning the material and the skills needed to perform those duties and tasks. So if you really don't have a plan in place, and again, I didn't, then yeah, your passions will guide you because those are what's going to make you want to learn and get the value out of your experience in your education. From there, obviously, as you go through the years, you'll find out a bit more of what your niche is. You go to be an accountant, but instead of auditing, you love tax law. You find that out when you start taking tax law classes in your 300 and 400 level courses. So if you have a general concept, it's enough to get you going. And it's enough for you to get good grades that can then help you transfer into something that you want to be in later. But without that passion to figure out what you want to learn about, you're just going to keep changing majors. You're going to be there longer. You're going to drop out, and then you're not going to have the means to repay anything that you owe. So, I guess the last bit of advice that I'd mention is that it's also college experience is not just what you get in the moment, and as we've been alluding to and talking about, it's in the future, but social and educational impacts in the future. If you go to college, you party all the time, and then you go to the real world, and you're not partying all the time, you have quite a transition you're facing. So whatever you do in the future, you should be or not future. Whatever you do in college socially, you should start to prepare yourself to, to remember that that's not how it's going to be after college. You have to be able to start to transition your life out of college and out of schooling because you're going to learn for your whole life, but you're not going to be a school student your whole life. So follow your passion and just kind of slowly, personally and socially prepare yourself to leave college.
If you're going to university or college for the intention of partying and drinking and being quote unquote independent, you're going for the wrong reasons entirely. You can be independent.
Yeah,
You
that's
can
all
move
it said.
out at 18 and be independent and drink. You don't have to go spend thousands of dollars to do it and then potentially get in trouble and cost your parents more money if they help you with the loans. You can
Or
be
the law.
independent and get your own job. Yeah. If your reason for going to college is to drink and party and be quote unquote independent, learn how to be an adult and all that stuff, that's 100% the wrong reasons. Even if you're like, well, I'll also get my job and stuff. No, those are the wrong reasons. You need to
And you also
reprioritize
don't need to. You also don't need to pay tens of thousands of dollars to go watch a sports team that you can watch on TV, or you can pay the
or get the
hundred dollar
tickets
ti- or you can pay the $100 ticket to go watch one game.
or
If
season pass
you're,
for the campus. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
You got to
it's
what are your priorities? Is it for the marketing and for the quote unquote fun aspect or for the actual skill building? Ari,
you're pay,
what is your
you're
final?
paying to be you're paying to be conned. Go on.
Yeah, you're paying for it.
I think
What
with
is
me,
your last suggestion for or advice for it? Whether you still think
I
it's a
mean, I think
full on
you.
scam or not, that's up to you. What are your thoughts on it?
Mhm. Yeah, so I definitely agree with both of you in terms of like what points you make about people who don't know what they are passionate about and learning what to become passionate in, I guess, is really a process. And honestly, that's just a life thing, really, in general. Is like learning what it is that you're passionate about, and then making the best effort in trying to find a career that actually pays you well enough to live off of your passions. But in terms of people who don't know what to people who don't know what they're passionate about, and then also facing the prospect of going to university, I would say to them that maybe if there's definitely enough time to start doing like internships or getting into like, different things and learning, about like what it is that you don't like or what it is that you do like. Just to echo the points that you all made again, finding what it is that you're passionate about, but also taking the extra steps of like, all right, well, if I thought about like maybe becoming a police officer, so maybe I should probably get in contact with the local sheriff or, to ride along in like a police, car and see what it is to be like a police officer, in the day to day, ask them questions, and seeing like the reality of what it is in like, the profession, than to have like a preconceived notion of it and then learning, after the fact and saying like, later to yourself, oh, I don't want to become an officer if it's, this is a lot of paperwork, or, this is a lot more than what I expected. It's a lot more commitments. Well, I think, really taking the time and just saying to yourself like, okay, well, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then just going for it. And seeing beforehand what it is, what entails with that career, and whether or not you can make a future out of it. I think all of it is very important in terms of, building that sense of, idea. And it's really a lot to put on an individual, especially like,
At a young
a lot of
age with
times
no real critical thinking
if
for
you're
themselves as an
if
individual.
you're 15 or 16, you don't have all of those critical skills yet in order to make, life decisions, and to force, people to just start thinking about that stuff is also really difficult, because like when I was 16 or 17, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And now that I'm, closer to 30, I feel as though, well, I have a much, much greater sense of who I am, a much better sense of, what I want in my future, that, I feel as though maybe some things in society like I don't agree with and that should be different, or, some things out of society that says that, I do agree with. But it really is like in more than just seeing what you're passionate about is, getting a sense of like who you are in a way is, I mean, if you want to become a politician, for example, but you're not necessarily like the most social person, I mean, I think it would be really good for you to step out of your comfort zone as well, because it really is like a skill, for someone who doesn't have that inner extroversion, for example. Well, you have to develop the skills in order to become a politician, because no one's going to, take the time to listen to someone who isn't confident in themselves. And so it really is like if you are in a situation where you don't know, then, you got to become like a little bit more open to just like different things and different aspects, and also getting to know yourself. And yeah, I think that, it really is all like inclusive. You have to really get to know yourself in order to make your own life decisions. Whereas, like, your parents are forcing a narrative on you that you shouldn't really, you make your own life decisions ultimately after, you become an adult. So it really is what do you want? What is it that you want to give in society, and ultimately what it is that, you're passionate about. And if you're not passionate about anything, then, well, yeah, get to know yourself. That way, yeah, I'm passionate about this. I think I can make a career out of it, and then put all your effort into it. So I think that would be like the overall like advice I would ever give to anyone.
Yeah. Again, definitely off that last sentence of don't go just to go. You need to have a plan to use what time and
Don't go
resources
just
out
to
of it
go.
properly.
Don't go for the wrong reasons, and go for yourself. Go for something that, that you're passionate for. don't just go for the sake of going.
Oh yeah, that's true. Your parents may want you to go into, but you may be able to get a sufficient job with going for trade school or getting certifications that don't require a college degree that give you the same job. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good angle of it. Also, definitely didn't think about that. I didn't. So.
All right, and did you folks want to talk about anything else?
We could
I
always rant.
think
could
we kind of
always
went
rant
full
and
circle
ramble.
with it. We started
Okay.
off with your hard hitting. Maybe not college is a scam, but you don't need to go to college, and kind of wrapped back up into a more nuanced care package of more specifically what you meant and why. I guess I think it was a good discussion. We definitely repeated some points, but I think that was more so we didn't get lost in tangents,
Right.
so we could all stay on the same. As abstract of a topic as it was so we could all stay on the same general thought process to stay focused a bit. So
That's true.
it's very
I
easy
think
to go
we've
into
made
these
really
other
good points.
specifics. It's
Yeah.
so easy to get lost in specifics with this. It's such a massive discussion. We'll definitely have more discussions about specifics of this in the future. Probably more casual discussions about like experiences and roommates and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
I will say thank you, boys, for joining me. That's again me, Ari, Dean, and Orik. As always, you can follow us on social media. Give us a shout out if you have any like topics for suggestion. You can always comment below. As always, thank you, boys, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.
yeah, tune in next time for the next unfiltered pineapple episode, and I will catch you gentlemen in the next one.
Yo,
See
have
you,
a good
boys.
day.
Bye.